This now brings us on to the next item on this afternoon's agenda, which is the Office of Ombudsman of Local and Regional Authorities, in English.
Of Ombudsman and Local and Regional Authorities. It will be my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Rafael RIBÓ I MASSÓ, the Ombudsman of Catalonia and Chairman of the International Ombudsman Institute, European region, Spain, to make a statement. Mr. RIBÓ I MASSÓ, I hope you had time to have a lunch, because we missed you to this midday at the lunchtime. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I hope we're going to see each other during dinner. I
would like to thank you for this invitation to take part in the debate, and I just want to say that the International Ombudsman Institute is very pleased to collaborate with the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of Europe. We have been working with the Assembly, with the Human Rights Commissioner and the Venice Commission for some time now, and about 3 months ago we sent in our opinion on the draft law on the Ombudsman in Montenegro. So I'm telling you that just to say that I feel very much at ease amongst you here in Strasbourg, and I do apologize, by the way, for my poor French. I think we should emphasize 4 aspects of the report that have been presented here. We first of all need to look at the definition of an ombudsman, then look at the existence of regional or local ombudsmen, then look at the new opportunities and powers of the ombudsman, and fourthly, look at some of the dangers looming on the horizon. First of all, we need to look at the ombudsman at all levels and consider the ombudsman to be an absolutely crucial institution in a democracy for the democratic oversight of our governments. It is more necessary than ever before to affirm the principle of good governance. Certainly, this is important for all people throughout Europe, as well as citizens throughout the world. They are all entitled to good governance. What this means is that it is not sufficient for administrative decisions to merely be lawful. Rather, at the same time, they must respect people's rights to good governance, because a decision can be lawful, but at the same time, there can be an instance of poor administration. That is why we have to look at what we mean by ombudsman. What we do mean are genuinely independent institutions that have the necessary resources to carry out enquiries and which are accountable alone to Parliament or to whichever democratic body has elected them. I think it is important to discuss the dimension of a complaint. A complaint is not consultation. Rather, a complaint arises when an administrative decision might be in breach of a right, and the ombudsman would then start an inquiry or would act ex officio in order to look at the way in which that breach could be remedied. Ombudsman must have the power to do that and must have the power to investigate all administrations, even the President of the Republic. Secondly, we need to look at why we need regional and local ombudsmen. All European countries, regardless of the type of territorial structure they have, regardless of whether they have a federal, autonomous or regional structure, already have ombudsmen. The only exception is Portugal, which, pursuant to a ruling by the Constitutional Court, has been unable to institute an ombudsman in the Azores. But in Austria, all the Länder may have ombudsmen, although to date only the Tyrol and Carinthia have instituted the office of ombudsman. In other Länder, the national ombudsman performs that role. In the United Kingdom, there are ombudsmen in Wales, Scotland, and in Northern Ireland, as well as the Greater London area. So we have ombudsmen covering about 30 million inhabitants. There are also ombudsmen in many regions in the territorial unities with political power which make up Italy, Belgium, Switzerland, Russia and Spain. They also have local ombudsmen in many countries, and some examples of those are Bulgaria, Greece and the Netherlands. And there are many reasons for the existence of these institutions. And to mention just a few, I would suggest that it is the fact that they operate at grassroots level, that they respect autonomy and have a clearly defined role to play. Because if one is to perform oversight over the executive, then a territorial ombudsman has to have oversight over a territorial entity. For example, in Catalonia, the autonomous government is responsible for prisons, and they have to account for their actions to Parliament, and only the autonomous ombudsman can go before the Parliament. That is why territorial ombudsmen have to be completely independent. Secondly, they also have to have the staffing levels and finances they require. Equally, they have to have authority and enjoy respect. In small and medium-sized towns, it's very difficult to have a real ombudsman. Often what one has is a conflict mediator who will act in very straightforward cases with no specific powers. That is why we have had contact with the Human Rights Commissioner as well as with the national and regional network of European Union Ombudsmen, meeting as of tomorrow in Copenhagen, and then various local and regional conferences such as the British Irish Ombudsman Association, the Scandinavian body, we've got the Coordinamento in Italy and Las Jornadas in Spain. Thirdly, there are new opportunities and powers for territorial ombudsmen, and there are various dimensions which might be included in your report. We are seeing the increasing privatization of services of general interest, but none of these services should fall outside the purview of local and regional ombudsmen. I'm referring here to private companies which bid to offer public services. We dealt with these issues at the World Congress of Ombudsmen in Stockholm in 2009. And we will be returning to this issue at a European seminar in Barcelona on the 21st and 22nd of November. It will also be on the agenda of the upcoming World Congress in Wellington in New Zealand next year. So we need to look at different regional and local levels. In Catalonia, for example, our Statute of Autonomy stipulates that we shall provide oversight as a guarantee to citizens over private companies in the field of services of general interest. Now, another innovation is the appeal made recently by Thomas Hammerberg, the Human Rights Commissioner, for national and regional ombudsmen to make a contribution to reducing the burden on the European Court of Human Rights as part of the Protocol 14 reform. And we have various institutions and European information departments which can work along those lines and assist them in this task. Then we have the United Nations Protocol for the Prevention of Torture. There are also regional and local ombudsmen who have responsibility for overseeing the implementation of that protocol. And then finally, finally, one further innovation is collaboration between national human rights structures and the Ombudsman at all levels which meet in the ICC of the United Nations. And fourthly, and I think most importantly for the purposes of your report, there are dangers looming on the horizon. I would like to draw your attention to the real dangers facing ombudsmen at local and regional level. You may remember that in Italy, various financial laws were used to eliminate the civic defenders, in other words, the ombudsman in Venezia Friuli, and also to do away with the ombudsman in Milan, which is a very large city. And there are now moves afoot to do away with the ombudsman in Castilla-La Mancha in Spain, and possibly even in other autonomous communities. Now, people try to justify these moves on the grounds of the budget, the economic crisis, the need to make public savings, but people forget that the local and regional ombudsmen have a role to play in our democracies, as outlined in your report and in my statement to you today. And that is why we need to protect the ombudsman at local and regional level. That may already be the case in some countries by dint of so-called organic laws, but the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe has just approved a report entitled Strengthening the Institution of Ombudsman in Europe. It is commissioning such a report to look into this issue, and I would like, if I may, to ask the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities to issue a declaration of solidarity with the Ombudsman and possibly do so in the wake of the debate today. Now, finally, I would like to say that we are willing to cooperate with the Congress in the same way as we do with other Council of Europe bodies. I can assure you of our full support. You can count on all the experience of our institute, and you can also count on all our members, who are virtually all the national, regional, and local ombudsmen throughout Europe. Very happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Mr. RIBÓ I
MASSÓ, thank you very much indeed for your statements. You are a very experienced ombudsman. You've been active in Catalonia, and in fact last year you were elected to the Bureau for 9 years, and your experience has shown to us, of course, that you've also had experience in the Catalonian parliaments and in Spanish parliaments, and that you know the area of politics very well indeed, and you're also there to voice criticism as well, and to underline the fact that if the ombudsman is abolished, that this is a very anti-democratic measure, and it's one that goes against citizens at regional and local level too, and that this really is a very important tool and instrument for developing democracy. And I'm delighted that Mrs. Pihlajasaari and Mr. Skard, our other rapporteurs, also have a very lengthy experience over several years as Bureau members of the Congress. Mr. Skard was the chairman of the Congress, and Mrs. Pihlajasaari has been working here for quite some time. And from the Nordic countries, of course, we have a great deal of experience with the ombudsman institutions. I'd like to ask the two of you who's going to start. Ms. Pihlajasaari, can you start, please? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, Mr. RIBÓ I MASSÓ, our report is one of the first reports to be finalized by the Congress Governance Committee. However, neither myself nor my colleague Halvdan Skard are members of that committee. The reason for this is we were appointed as rapporteurs several years ago, then the report was the responsibility of the institutional committee. When the governance committee was set up, we accepted to continue as rapporteurs since we were both very interested in this subject. I think that it's very appropriate to this report to come out of the governance committee. The Office of Ombudsman, which is still a very recent institution in many of our countries, is closely tied to the principles of good governance. It's all about improving the quality of public administration. I think it will be useful to remind you of the main reasons behind this report. 12 years ago, we adopted a resolution calling for setting up of local and regional ombudsman offices to deal with complaints against local and regional authorities. Many countries now have ombudsman services and structures. Although the provision of these services is very different from country to country. This report sets out to look at how they are working and what needs to be improved. First, a word about the name. I know that French often prefer to use the name mediator, their own term. And Spain, I had it somewhere here, defender de pueblo. We are going to stick in both English and French to the original old Swedish term ombudsman, from ombuds, which means commissioner or agent, not so unlike our human rights commissioner. We have struggled a lot with the basic concept. Are we talking about local and regional ombudsman or about ombudsman that handle complaints about local and regional services? The two are not necessarily the same, certainly in my country. Should we confine our attention to complaints about local and regional authorities, or about all public services at local and regional level, whether the service provider is a public authority or a private company? In the end, we have chosen to refer to ombudsman services which handle complaints concerning local and regional public services. A broad concept for sure, but I think that this is what most adequately describes the full range of ombudsman protection, what we are seeking to promote. Throughout our report, we have specified that all persons, regardless of their status and nationality, should have access to ombudsman services. This was in response to the comment that the Committee of Ministers made on our 2004 recommendation, which had the title Regional Ombudspersons, an institution in the service of citizens' rights. The Committee of Ministers pointed out that you should not need to have citizenship to have protection against maladministration. I think that we tend to talk about citizens as a synonym for people in general, and it's too easy to forget that there are many people in our towns who have difficulty in acquiring citizenship and who may be more affected than others by the shortcomings in our public services. I could go on, but I think it's time to give the floor to my co-rapporteur, Halvdan Skard.
Bitte, lieber Freund Halvdan Skard.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I ask Mr. Skard to take the floor?
I'm very pleased to be presenting this report to you today. As my colleague Helena Pihlajasaari mentioned, this text has been long in the making. That is not always a bad thing. I think that the text we have today has improved a lot from the original draft. I'd like to mention some of the improvements that we have made since we began working on this report. The question of proximity has proven to be a contentious issue. Some people strongly believe that each town must have its own ombudsman and that people should not need to travel in order to meet an ombudsman, or ombudsperson as some people insist on calling them. I neither agree nor disagree. I think that in each country they must find the model of ombudsman provision that is best fits their own particular situation. It may not be possible to afford to have a separate ombudsman for every local authority, and sometimes centralized services do a better job for those concerned. The important issue here is that the ombudsman be easily accessible and that the various services concerned cooperate well together to avoid duplication and ensure that the complainant is quickly referred to the right person. This is one area where modern technology can help us. With the proliferation of modern communication tools, it is no longer so important to meet the ombudsman face to face, even if that may be nice. What is important is to have easy access in some way or another, and even dialogue, through, for example, internet or the telephone. But of course, there remains the problem of those who may need help but do not have the resources or the knowledge to use modern technology. The issue of coordination of different ombudsman services is also a difficult one. Some would like to see a national coordinating committee in each country, and others want coordinating committees in each region. I'm not against these. They certainly seem to work well in some cases. But again, I do not believe in a one-size-fits-all approach. That is why we have chosen to say that these should be set up where appropriate. What is most important is, again, that complaints are quickly referred to the appropriate service and handled in a good way. We also underline the need for systematic follow-up to the recommendations. Ombudsmen make only recommendations. They do not act as courts and take legally binding decisions. However, the public has a right to expect that the recommendations are followed up and that this is done in an acceptable time frame. And we also have the right to know, in those cases where recommendations are not implemented, what the reasons are for this. To conclude, I hope you agree that this is a good report. We can recommend it to you, and once adopted, we urge you to take it home and spread the word in your associations and local and regional authorities and on the national level. We need to protect and develop the Ombudsman, and certainly through our resolution and recommendation, we do express solidarity and support in times when the Ombudsman is under pressure or even danger, as our guest said just a few minutes ago. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Skard. Thank you, Mrs. Pihlajasaari. I'd now like to open the debate on this subject, and I'd like to give the floor to Mrs. Svetlana Bohanturchuk from Krakow.
Svetlana
Bohanturchuk.
Ja, bitte wiederholen Sie noch einmal.
Let's repeat it once again.
President, colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank the rapporteurs for the very substantive reports and to thank the guest speaker as well. I represent Ukraine, which of course has the presidency of the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe at the present time. Now, this is a first for Ukraine since it joined the Council of Europe. As such, Ukraine considers this to be a real opportunity for it to make a contribution to the development of Europe. One of the priorities of Ukraine's presidency of the Council of Europe is the protection of the rights of children. And this is one of the areas of work which has been identified as a priority of the Council of Europe, because it relates to human rights, and it is also a focus of the European Week of Local Democracy of 2011. 3 weeks ago, the President of Ukraine broadened the office of the Ombudsman in Ukraine. According to Ukraine's constitution, the Ombudsman Institute is defined by the Verkhovny Rad of Ukraine. In recent years, 5 regional ombudsman offices have been opened in Ukraine, drawing on the experience of other European countries. All this is to say that the office of the Ombudsman in Ukraine is increasing in importance, and we are responding to the calls of the Congress to introduce Ombudsman office at local and regional level. In Ukraine, we have also introduced the Office of Ombudsman for Children. This ombudsman comes from the office of the former president's team, and she is a member of the opposition party. Once again, this fulfills one of the elements of our resolution. The 32 countries which have ombudsmen for children's rights now includes Ukraine. Now, of course, there are certain members of the Congress who have doubts relating to the office of an ombudsman for children's office when it comes to duplication. But this is an important office which protects children from violence. We consider this to be an important office. Now, an example of why this office is so important can be seen is that over the past 2 months, our office received 100 complaints relating to human rights abuses in children. These covered a whole range of issues relating to housing, juvenile offenders. What's important here is that the rights of children are heard. It's important that children's rights ombudsmen don't duplicate the work of human rights ombudsmen, but they complement one another. This is essential for strengthening the faith which our citizens have in local and regional authorities. We are looking to create a network between the ombudsman offices in Ukraine, and we are working with the European network of ombudsmen and other international institutions. We consider that the coordinating committee has a very important role to play. I'd like to thank you very much, and I'd like to take this opportunity to invite you to visit the exhibition on local and regional democracy in Ukraine following this session. Thank you.
I hope that everybody will visit that very interesting exhibition on Ukraine. I would now like to give the floor to Ms. Maria Besledova from the Russian delegation.
Добрый вечер,
Good evening, President, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I know everyone's very tired, but we've still got a little bit of work to do, so I'd like to ask you for your attention. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Russian delegation. This is a very topical issue. In the Russian Federation, the Ombudsman Office is included in the Russian Constitution. The law was adopted much later in 2007. We have a draft law which has been amended, which sees that the laws for the constitute entity should also envisage the introduction of such an office. The Ombudsman Office in Russia is independent from other authorities. The Ombudsman for Human Rights is defined in the laws of the Russian Federation. In a whole series of our constituent entities, we already have human rights ombudsman offices up and running. One example is Ulyanovsk. This office was supported by the governor of Ulyanovsk when it was introduced, and it's now up and running since 2009. Since it has been up and running, the office has received more than 3,000 complaints from all different sorts of citizens, young people, disabled people, veterans, a whole range of complaints.
Те требования, которые предъявляют граждане, вполне обоснованные претензии к представителям различных органов власти, когда они в своей деятельности не соблюдают принципы.
Citizens can come to the Ombudsman with a whole series of complaints against different institutions. The Ombudsman Office works very closely together with society organizations, with youth organizations in Ulyanovsk. The Human Rights Ombudsman takes part in various chambers and is involved in the work of local and regional authorities. In Ulyanovsk is one of the first regions in Russia to introduce this institution. And this is a first, not just in the Russian Federation, but for all former members of the Soviet Union who are working to promote human rights. We have adopted a regional program which is being implemented to promote human rights together with the local authorities in Ulyanovsk and our university, as well as society organizations. Associations are actively involved in this work. We are working with federal authorities. We are also working with the Ministry of Justice, with the judiciary, and again with society organizations. And we've put together a council under the auspices of the governor. The law relating to the Human Rights Ombudsman in our region is defined by the legislation. We're also working on draft law to strengthen citizens' interests. The governor is working very actively in this area. No draft laws can be passed on to the governor without first having passed through the office of the Human Rights Ombudsman. I would like to also inform you that in our region we have also established a chamber for justice which works to guarantee that the rights of children are protected, works to combat corruption and to work to resolve issues relating to housing. These are all issues which are of great concern to our citizens. This body is independent. It has independent sources of finance and it works with society organizations. We have a building in the center of our city where this council is housed. We also have our society chamber located in this building, so all institutions who are working to promote the rights of children and also society organizations are located there. This provides us with the opportunity to better coordinate our work and to also reduce administrative barriers. We are drawing on the experience of other constituent entities in Russia in our work.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Might I ask all of the colleagues to keep to the time allotted to them, because if we overrun, then it means that other speakers don't have enough time. So it's an appeal for solidarity. I give the floor to the United Kingdom, Mr. Mediarata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would firstly like to congratulate Helena Pihlajasaari and Halvdan Skard for their excellent presentations. There is no doubt that the Office of the Ombudsman is a very valuable instrument in fostering public confidence in local and regional administrations. As the report points out, there is no single blueprint for the structure of the Ombudsman services. In England, there are 3 local government ombudsmen. Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, as constituent parts of the United Kingdom, have their own separate arrangements, which you have already heard from Mr. Rafael Massó. The Ombudsman's offices are independent of all government departments, councils, and politicians. We have a clearly defined procedure for referring complaints to the Ombudsman. In the first instance, the complainant is encouraged to write to the head of the department he or she is complaining about. The head of the department will send a considered reply and also say that if the complainant is not satisfied with the explanation, the matter can be taken up further with the chief executive of the authority. The chief executive will likewise investigate the matter if the complaint is referred to him, and in his reply, he will also state that if the complainant is still not satisfied with the explanation, he or she can refer the matter to the local government ombudsman, whose full contact details are given to the complainant. Only then, as a last resort, does the ombudsman get involved. As the report emphasizes, the services of the ombudsman should be more widely known to maintain public confidence in the affairs of respective local authorities and to protect people against maladministration at the local and regional level. Thank you very much.
Vielen herzlichen Dank.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mediarata. Now the list of speakers has been exhausted. I give the floor to RIBÓ I MASSÓ on the contributions to the debate.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just for short remarks about names. There are so many names in the world of the Ombudsman. False Anwaltschaft, Mediateur, valedor do povo, provedor de justiça, defensor, parliamentary commissioner, syndic, etc., etc., etc. But you cannot tell until which dimension it's good or not to have an ombudsman. There is ombudsman in Great London, 30 million people, or in Belgrade, or in Amsterdam, or Rotterdam, or in Barcelona, local ombudsman. What I would like to underline is that proximity could not erase independence. Proximity is not a matter only of access. We have, for example, video conference access to our office. Any person through its own laptop can access to our office, or other types of modern technology access. But proximity can lose its meaning and even can harm independence when the ombudsman has no means to act, personnel or material means. I give you an example. Sometimes in very, very small local ombudsman, the same civil servant replies to the person whenever it's harming his rights or her rights, and in the afternoon, he or she is helping to the ombudsman to attend the same person. Then, because there are no more means, and that's not believable, it's not clear. No? That's why I would add the concept of democratic functionality to try to precise what is the real dimension for ombudsman. And let's differentiate national human rights institutions at any level from ombudsman. In some countries, the ombudsman has both roles, ombudsman and national human rights institution. In others, no. I would finish saying that we should consider the new phenomena as private companies offering public services. Every day, more public services are in hands of private companies, and they cannot be out of control. I offer you again our collaborations, and of course, I congratulate very strongly both rapporteurs for your speeches and your work. Thank you.
Vielen herzlichen Dank.
Thank you very much.
Mr.
RIBÓ I MASSÓ. Now I would like to ask Mrs. Pihlajasaari if she would like to reply.
Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank my colleagues for the statements and Mr. RIBÓ I MASSÓ for her experiences. I'm very grateful for that. I congratulate Ukraine for the 5 regional ombudsman offices. It's a good issue that you have crowned these offices. And the Russian and United Kingdom, they are in our questionnaire which we made and get answers. They are among the 8 states where there are separate ombudsmen in the central and the local regional level. Thank you for your statements.
Herr Skard, bitte.
Mr. Skard.
Thank you also for good interventions and good help. And we have been, as we said, discussing the term ombudsman. In one sense, in my country at least, we think that every local politician is an ombudsman for the population. So we get reactions from our voters and from children to look into matters. But we have lifted our discussion here today to another level. But even in the countries, we can hear that there are different solutions. And in some countries, there are separate ombudsmen for separate fields of politics or separate themes. One ombudsman for gender equalization, one ombudsman for health services. And then we heard an example from Ukraine, an ombudsman for children. And if I may end on a personal note to President, Norway, where I come from, was the first country to have an ombudsman for children. So it's natural for me to congratulate Ukraine for having one. But even more personal, the first ombudsman in Norway was one of my sisters, so I know the system very well. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Skard. And please pass on our regards to your sister. Now, this debate is now closed.